On Sunday morning, February 4th, 2018, while 6-year-old Angela slept soundly, and Daniela and Rahaman laughed in the backyard, the peaceful weekend was shattered by a violent argument between the couple, Reina Isabel Encarnacion Morales and Victor. No one knows exactly what ignited this final confrontation. Then a strange sound echoed, and everything fell into a terrifying silence. Days later, police entered the home to a haunting scene. 4 lifeless bodies lay in rooms that were once filled with children's laughter. The air was thick with the stench of death, and swarms of flies clustered on every window. What could have turned a family argument into such a tragedy? And why would a seemingly gentle man commit such chillingly brutal acts? In 2013, Santo Domingo was radiant under the spring sun. Its streets were bustling with the honking of cars, the aroma of street food, and the laughter of children, creating a vibrant rhythm of life. But Reina Isabel Encarnacion Morales often walked through them alone, her eyes following the hurried footsteps, feeling like she didn't belong anywhere. Born in 1985, she grew up in a broken home, with her parents separating when she was young, despite the attention from both her biological father and stepfather. Reina felt an emptiness during silent meals and lonely nights. This led to a deep desire to live freely and do what she wanted. Reina was an intelligent and exceptionally strong-willed child. She was an outstanding student in commercial law and dreamed of also studying medicine to expand her horizons. Her academic achievements were not just a source of personal pride, but also her way of asserting herself against the backdrop of a painful childhood. At age 20, Reina's life took a different turn. She fell in love with Daniel Bowden, an older man, and put aside her plans to get married. The couple had 3 children, Daniela, Rahaman, and Angela. The first 8 years seemed happy, but gradually, the age difference created cracks. Constant arguments strained the marriage. Daniel, realizing the environment was harmful to the children, agreed to a divorce. Reina was granted custody of the 2 older children, Daniela and Rahamin, while Angela was cared for by Daniel's aunt. The children primarily lived with their maternal grandmother, while Reina lived life to the fullest to make up for lost youth, seeking experiences that made her feel truly alive. During these months, Reina often attended gatherings and parties, hoping to meet new people and feel new sensations. One evening, amidst loud music and glittering lights, she noticed Victor Alexander Portoreal Mendoza. He stood out from the moment she saw him. Long black hair, white contact lenses, eye makeup, and dressed head to toe in black, a look heavily influenced by biker and heavy metal culture that made anyone turn to stare. But Reina was not intimidated. On the contrary, she was drawn to him. In Victor's deep gaze, she recognized a part of the darkness and freedom she had been searching for. Victor, watching her silently, noticed the mix of sensitivity and boldness in Reina, an energy that was both vibrant and unpredictable, unlike anything he had ever encountered. They began to talk. Awkwardly at first, but quickly found a connection. Reina laughed and talked about her struggles to break free from her past, while Victor shared stories of his harsh childhood and his passion for motorcycles. Each word, each glance, tightened to their bond. Just a few weeks later, they were dating and decided to live together. Life initially seemed harmonious. Reina had a new love, Victor had a family, and the children had a new father. But beneath the surface, the differences in values, responsibilities, and Reina's desire for freedom were silently creating conflicts, foreshadowing that their initial happiness was only a temporary lull before the storm. In October 2017, Reina and Victor's lives entered a new chapter when circumstances forced them to take in all 3 children. Daniel's aunt could no longer care for Angela, while Reina's mother was also having health problems and couldn't look after Daniela and Rahamin. From a free-spirited couple, they suddenly became a family of 5, squeezed into a small apartment. Realizing the cramped space, They decided to move to a more spacious rental house in another part of Santo Domingo around the same time. Reina was fortunate to receive a job offer with an attractive salary. Everything seemed to be falling into place: a house with separate rooms, a stable income, and, most importantly, the children were with their mother. This was probably the happiest time this family had ever had. However, fate had a cruel twist in store. Just a few months later, Reina was unexpectedly laid off. The shock plunged the family into financial desperation. They no longer had enough money for food, let alone to pay rent. Victor's mother had to send money to help regularly, while Reina's mother was completely unaware of her daughter's difficulties. The financial pressure was a double-edged sword. Cutting deep into the relationship between Reina and Victor, arguments became more frequent and intense. Victor, who had once been confident in his distinctive biker look, now had to face Reina's bitter criticism for his inability to find a suitable job. One morning in early January 2018, Victor's acquaintances were surprised to see him with a crudely cut short haircut, a complete change from his signature long hair. When asked, Victor admitted in a strange tone that Reina had cut his hair while he was sleeping, an act of revenge after a fierce argument the night before. This incident not only showed the level of tension, but also reflected the silent cruelty that was spreading in their relationship. Victor also revealed the ultimatum Reina had given him. He had to find a high-paying job within a month, or she would leave him and the children. This threat was a ticking time bomb, creating immense pressure for a man struggling to find work in a difficult economic climate. But a more serious issue was silently unfolding, one that only Reina's mother initially noticed. She had witnessed the special relationship between Victor and Angela on several occasions. He would often hold the little girl on his lap, kiss her excessively, and gave her an intimate nickname, Señorita. These behaviors were initially seen by the family as normal expressions of affection from a stepfather. However, Reina gradually felt that something was wrong. She started to notice Victor's inappropriate behaviors toward Angela, especially when the little girl was asleep. These suspicions became clearer and clearer, to the point where Reina could no longer stay silent. The WhatsApp messages Reina sent to Victor in the final days of January 2018 reveal her deep concern. In these messages, she bluntly expressed her worries about his inappropriate behaviors toward Angela. The confrontations via text became more heated, with Reina threatening to call the police if Victor didn't stop his suspicious actions. For Victor, who was already sinking in a financial quagmire, facing the risk of losing his home and partner, the possibility of being exposed for child sexual abuse made the situation desperate. He realized that Reina would never stay silent. Once she called the police, his life would completely fall apart. In the mindset of a person with antisocial personality disorder, lacking a conscience and a sense of guilt, when backed into a corner, surrender or compromise is never considered. Instead, in Victor's sick mind, a monstrous idea began to form to eliminate everyone who could harm him. Sunday, February 4th, 2018 began like any other morning in the small house in Santo Domingo. Reina woke up early and called her mother. As was her daily routine, her voice on the phone sounded tense, as if she were trying to hide the worries tormenting her mind. The call ended, and the atmosphere in the house seemed to become heavier after the brief phone conversation with her mother in the early morning. Reina and Victor had a major argument in their shared bedroom. No one knows for sure what triggered this final conflict. It could have been the financial pressure, the threats of calling the police, or a combination of all of them. In a fit of rage, or perhaps a cold, calculated decision, Victor acted. He delivered multiple brutal punches to Reina's neck, chest, and abdomen. According to forensic records, Reina died from multiple stab wounds, indicating the extreme brutality and determination of her attacker. After murdering Reina, Victor showed a chilling calmness. He dragged her body into a corner of the room, locked the bedroom door, and walked out as if nothing had happened. The 3 children were still alive, unaware of their mother's horrible fate just a few steps away. Their laughter echoed through the house, Creating a gruesome contrast to the bloody reality inside the locked room, Victor began to execute his next calculated steps. He called Daniela, the smart and obedient 10-year-old girl, and told her to go buy cigarettes for him. This was no ordinary request in normal circumstances. A 10-year-old would not be allowed to buy cigarettes at stores, but this was a strategy to get Daniela out of the house, creating an opportunity for the next brutal acts. When Daniela's footsteps faded on the street, Victor went into the room of the two younger girls. Angela, the 6-year-old he had abused and the direct cause of the confrontation with Reina, was sound asleep in her innocent dreams. Victor took a necktie from the closet and strangled her while she was still asleep. His choice to kill the child he had abused showed a clear purpose to hide his crime and eliminate the most important witness. About an hour later, Daniela's familiar footsteps were heard from the front door. She returned with the pack of cigarettes in her hand, completely unaware that her sister was no longer breathing. Victor greeted her with a smile and a normal expression, took the cigarettes, and thanked her. Then, just a few minutes later, with the same chilling composure, he strangled Daniela with the very same necktie, still soaked with the scent of death from her sister. The 10-year-old girl took her last breath in a state of confusion and despair, her wide eyes finally reflecting her incomprehension of why the man she called stepfather was doing this horrible thing. Victor carefully moved the bodies of the two girls into the master bedroom with Reina. The 3 bodies now lay side by side in the closed room, their peaceful faces in death creating a haunting scene. Meanwhile, in the backyard, Rahamin, the 9-year-old boy, was still playing alone, perhaps wondering why the house was so unusually quiet. Victor walked out to the backyard with a normal expression. He told the boy in a friendly tone that his sister Daniela had gone to the store and hadn't come back, so he would take him to their Aunt Johanna Mendoza Coelho's house and then go look for Daniela. Rahamin, a well-behaved and trusting boy, obediently went with Victor without any suspicion. He even asked when his mother would be home, and Victor answered casually that she was resting and would see him later. Victor took the boy to his aunt's house in another part of the city, leaving him there with a plausible excuse and promising to return soon. Rahamin's aunt, who completely trusted the man she considered a son-in-law, happily welcomed the boy, returning to the house that now contained 3 bodies. Victor had time to think. He knew he couldn't hide this forever. Sooner or later, someone would come looking for Reina and discover the tragedy. Reina's mother would worry when she couldn't reach her daughter. Her ex-husband Daniel might come to visit the children. Most importantly, Rahamin was still alive and would become a witness. In the warped mind of the murderer, this innocent 9-year-old boy had become the final threat to be eliminated. Early on Monday, February 5th, Victor returned to Rahamin's aunt's house. He appeared with a feigned anxious look and said that Daniela had been found and it was time for the whole family to reunite at home. The boy's aunt, without any suspicion, happily handed Rahamin over to Victor with a loving farewell. On the way home, Rahamin probably asked about his mother and sisters. As he hadn't seen them since yesterday, Victor reassured the boy that they were waiting at home and that they would have a fun family dinner. But when they walked into the house full of the smell of death, a cruel fate was waiting for the boy. Victor led Rahamin straight into a room and performed the final act in the horrific series of crimes. He hanged the boy with a rope from a metal bar in the closet. The last child in the family took his last breath in despair and confusion, not understanding why his life had ended so cruelly. The method Victor used to commit the murders shows that this was not a spontaneous act, but a premeditated crime executed methodically and with chilling composure. The murder of Reina might have stemmed from anger and desperation, but the killing of the children was entirely calculated. Angela was killed to hide the sexual abuse. Daniela and Rahamin were killed because they were potential witnesses. Victor chose different methods of murder for each victim, showing a complete lack of emotion and conscience, a hallmark of a severe personality disorder. After completing his brutal string of crimes, Victor Alexander Portoreal Mendoza displayed a frightening calmness. He did not flee or hide, but continued his life as if nothing had happened. In a brazen act, He even returned to Reina's father's house to get the children's clothes, claiming they had been forgotten. While there, he took one of the victim's iPads and pawned it for 500 Dominican pesos. He used this blood money to go on a beach vacation with his best friend, Crystal, during the trip. The psychological pressure prevented him from keeping the secret completely. He confessed to Crystal that he had done something bad to his girlfriend, but didn't give details. Crystal sensed the seriousness from Victor's tone and expression. She suggested they go to Reina's house to check on her, but Victor vehemently refused, giving the excuse that the family was in turmoil and he was in a heavy mood. Crystal believed she had done her best and did not call the police, while Victor maintained a normal facade. Inside the house, undeniable evidence was emerging. The 4 bodies in the high temperatures of the tropical climate began to decompose quickly, creating an increasingly strong stench. Neighbors initially tried to find a reasonable explanation for the smell-rotting garbage, a dead animal, or other common causes. But when the smell became unbearably horrible and flies swarmed the windows, they knew something serious was happening, because the family had just moved in and didn't know anyone. No one had their phone numbers or any way to contact them. No one had seen any family members in several days. The combination of the terrifying smell and the unusual silence led concerned neighbors to call emergency services. On February 7, 2018, a few hours after the emergency call, the police arrived at the scene. They broke the lock on the door and entered the house, greeted by a horrific sight that made even experienced police officers shudder. The 4 bodies of Reina and her 3 children were found in a state of advanced decomposition. Daniela and Angela were in the room next to their mother's body. Rahaman was discovered in a particularly horrifying state, hanged from a metal bar in the closet. Forensic police sealed the scene and collected evidence. They found a 3-inch blood-stained Sevillana knife, a white mobile phone, and a blood-stained long-sleeved shirt. These items would become crucial pieces in reconstructing the crime. An unusual development was the presence of the press at the scene. It is unclear how journalists were there as soon as detectives identified the man living with Reina. As they began searching for Victor, a news report with shocking details about the family's deaths was broadcast live on a major city television channel. Victor, who was working at a car repair shop, knew immediately that the police had discovered his crime through the TV news. Realizing the game was over, he had his final reactions. He sent a message to his boss about the end of his love life, describing it as a perfect love without arguments and a sad story. In a message to his best friend, Miguel Ureña Marini, he forwarded Reina's family's contact information and asked Miguel to give it to the police. He explained that he only trusted Miguel, regretted what had happened, and requested that his final wish be conveyed to his motorcycle club, that he wanted to be sent off like a biker with a large motorcade escorting his funeral. Victor's last message before he stopped replying to Miguel was about how he didn't trust anyone, that people wanted to save him, but it couldn't happen, and that he would be leaving this world. Miguel Ureña, upon receiving the alarming messages, immediately contacted the police and recounted the entire conversation. He said his friend seemed to be planning suicide. Police quickly tracked Victor's cell phone location and went to the scene. What they found was not a man trying to take his own life or on the run. Victor Alexander Portoreal Mendoza had done nothing to harm himself and did not even feel remorse for what happened. Instead, he had prepared for his arrest with a chilling calculation. He packed a backpack with necessary items and went to a small park not far from the workshop. He sat contemplatively on the sidewalk next to the park when a passerby asked if he needed help. He shook his head and said he was fine. Then he got up, entered the park, and lay down on the grass, with his hands behind his head, looking up at the serene sky. Victor lay there for nearly an hour, as if enjoying his last moments of freedom. Around 8 a.m., a national police truck arrived. Victor did not move or resist. The arrest took less than 5 minutes in complete silence. This calmness was perfectly consistent with the diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder that he would receive later. Immediately after his arrest, Victor gave a detailed, unreserved confession. He did not ask for leniency and declared he wanted to pay for his actions. The detailed confession helped investigators almost completely reconstruct the timeline of events. However, investigators quickly realized that the initial confession about financial motivation was unconvincing. The extreme brutality of the crime, the sexual abuse of Angela, and the digital evidence gradually revealed a completely different picture of the true motive. The WhatsApp messages that Reyna had sent Victor a voice from the grave would become the key to unlocking the truth behind this tragedy. The Public Prosecutor's Office of the Dominican Republic conducted a comprehensive investigation and built a strong case. The official charges against Victor Alexander Portoreal Mendoza included murder, incestuous sexual abuse, robbery, torture, and barbaric acts, as stipulated by Articles 295, 296, 297, 302, 303, 331, 332, 1379, and 401 of the Dominican Penal Code. The key role in determining the true motive belonged to digital evidence. The recovered WhatsApp messages showed that Reyna had repeatedly confronted Victor about his sexual abuse of Angela. These messages not only clearly established the perpetrator's motive, but also proved that the barbaric acts were committed to silence Reyna and hide the sexual abuse crime. The autopsy results provided heartbreaking evidence of the level of brutality. Reyna died from multiple stab wounds to the neck, chest, and abdomen. Rahaman died from hanging, although the bodies were in an advanced state of decomposition. Preliminary autopsy results confirmed that Reyna and the two girls had been sexually abused. Forensic experts could not determine whether the sexual abuse occurred before or after the victims died due to the state of the bodies. However, combined with the evidence from the WhatsApp messages, the picture of the true motive became clear. A psychiatric evaluation determined that Victor suffered from antisocial personality disorder, with a complete lack of guilt and conscience. This finding was entirely consistent with his callous and calculated behavior throughout the crime and afterward. The trial began in January 2019 and was completed quickly in just 2 days. This swiftness was due to the defendant's full confession and the clear evidence the investigators had collected. About 18 witnesses were called to testify, including 2 forensic experts, friends, neighbors, Victor's colleagues, and people related to the victims' lives. The forensic experts' testimonies provided technical details about the crime, while other witnesses helped build a comprehensive picture of the character and behavior of both the defendant and the victims. Crystal, Victor's best friend, testified about their conversation during the beach trip when he confessed to doing something bad to his girlfriend. She also revealed that on the day he was arrested, he had given her all his social media passwords and his mother's phone number. As if preparing for his departure, another one of Victor's friends said that he had confessed the crime in detail a few days before his arrest. However, the confession was so horrific that the friend thought it was a joke and did not call the police. Everyone who had ever met Victor expressed shock at his actions. Neighbors, teachers, and colleagues had always considered him a quiet person with a distinctive but harmless appearance. He seemed non-aggressive, was not known to be a troublemaker, and, according to them, never spoke ill of others. One of the most painful moments of the trial was when Victor's mother spoke. She not only did not defend her son, but also asked the law to punish him appropriately. She begged Reyna's family for forgiveness for having such a son and shared their pain. These words created a moving moment where both families of the victims and the perpetrator had become victims of a horrific tragedy. Victor Alexander Portoreal Mendoza pleaded guilty to the murder of Reyna Isabel Encarnacion Morales and her 3 children. He also apologized to the victims' families and the public for his crimes. He said he realized he couldn't turn back time and bring back the lives he had taken, apologized to the community and the families for what happened, and contributed to his own arrest because he realized if he took his own life, he would not be able to pay for his actions. These words, although they sounded like a sincere apology, were considered by psychological experts to be an expression of a lack of true emotion and possibly just an attempt to make a good impression in court. Victor Alexander Portoreal Mendoza received the most severe sentence possible in the Dominican Republic's justice system at the time, 30 years in prison. When the sentence was pronounced, he was just 30 years old, meaning in the best case scenario, he could be released at age 60 and still have a part of his life to live in freedom. He will serve his sentence at the San Pedro de Macorís Correctional and Rehabilitation Center. This sentence, while being the maximum under current law, sparked public debate about the appropriateness of a 30-year sentence for such a brutal crime. Reina's mother, speaking on television programs after the trial, stated that she was satisfied with the outcome of the case. She believed justice had been served and the perpetrator had received a deserved punishment within the capabilities of the current legal system. However, Daniel Bowden, the biological father of the 3 children, still could not accept the reality. He said the tragedy would not have happened to his children if the initial judge had listened to the experts and granted him custody instead of Reina. This pain and regret will stay with him for the rest of his life. After his conviction, rumors spread that Victor Alexander Portoreal Mendoza had been killed by other inmates in prison. These rumors may have originated from the fact that child abusers are often treated brutally by other inmates in the prison system. However, authorities have officially denied these rumors. The prison administration issued a statement in April 2018 confirming that Victor was still alive and serving his sentence at the San Pedro de Macorís Correctional and Rehabilitation Center. The most important and lasting legacy of this case is its role as a catalyst for a comprehensive reform of the Dominican Penal Code. The case exposed a serious loophole in the old code, which was drafted in 1844 and had not been fully updated to deal with modern crimes. The core issue was that the old code did not have provisions for cumulative sentencing for multiple offenses. This meant that Victor, despite murdering 4 people and committing many other serious crimes, received only the maximum sentence of 30 years, the same as someone who committed a single murder. This obvious injustice caused a wave of public outrage in the Dominican Republic. Lawmakers, the press, and social organizations all spoke out, demanding comprehensive reform. The case name, Reina Encarnación Morales, became a symbol for the need for change. The pressure from the public and the severity of the case spurred the Dominican National Congress to expedite the process of reviewing and passing a new penal code. After years of discussion and drafting, the new code was finally enacted on August 3, 2025, and is expected to take effect in 2026. The new code brings revolutionary changes, increasing the maximum sentence from 30 to 40 years for serious crimes, and up to 60 years in cases of multiple serious offenses for the first time. The code allows for cumulative sentencing for multiple crimes, ensuring that those who commit multiple serious offenses will face a commensurate consequence for particularly heinous crimes. The code introduces the concept of a revisable life sentence. Had this new code been in effect at the time of Victor's trial, he could have faced a sentence of up to 60 years or even a revisable life sentence. The case not only led to legal changes, but also had a profound impact on social awareness. It raised awareness about the importance of recognizing and reporting signs of child abuse. Reina's story has become an example of the importance of listening to and supporting women who report domestic violence or abuse. The Encarnación Morales family massacre is a painful reminder of the dangers that can hide in the closest relationships. It shows the importance of trusting women's intuition when they report inappropriate behaviors and the necessity of a legal system strong enough to protect the most vulnerable in society. Reina Encarnación Morales died in an effort to protect her children from an abuser. Her voice, preserved through the WhatsApp messages, transcended death to demand justice. The 3 innocent children, Daniela, Rahamin, and Angela, have become a symbol for the need to better protect children and to strictly deal with those who harm them. Although the case is legally closed, there are still painful questions that the family and society must live with. Could this tragedy have been prevented if someone had listened more carefully to Reina's warnings? These questions have no easy answers, but they serve as a reminder of our collective responsibility to protect the vulnerable in our communities.